Welcome to the show. I'm Danella, and here's what's happening now. Today on our show, we're definitely going to talk about murder insurance. Also, And Our World is on deck, and we're going to talk about how deadly pollution really is. A new report came out yesterday. We're going to talk about the details of that. I was shocked. I believe you will be also. And why don't we just kick things off right now with political pop. Now, in political pop, Donald Trump says that the U.S. response to Puerto Rico, he gives it a rating. He rates us as a 10. So we are officially 1 month since Hurricane Maria struck. It was just 1 mile under being a Category 5. 1 month later, what are we still seeing? 80% of the island still without electricity, schools still out. Also, water in the area still scarce. Again, this is a very strong storm hitting a very weak infrastructure. And what does the president say? He says, I give it a 10. And I say it's a 10 out of 100. And that is your political pop. Now, let's get into this murder insurance. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this as well. Actually, the reason I heard about this is because of a campaign really bringing awareness of this murder insurance. And that's how I found out about it. So anyway, the NRA offers what some are calling murder insurance, and here's why they're calling it that. It's actually called Carry Guard Insurance, and the idea of it is that if you were to shoot someone, you could then get insurance coverage in case that happens and that person's family sues you. Yeah, that's what they're saying. So let's talk about what you get for what you get. Okay, so rates range from $13.95 a month, $13.95 a month, and that'll give you up to $250,000 in civil protection and $50,000 in criminal defense, right? Now, you can go up to a Gold Plus policy. That'll cost you $49.95 a month, and that provides you $1.5 million in civil protection and $250,000 in criminal defense. Again, this is offered by the National Rifle Association. Okay, so they're not the only lobbying group that offers this type of insurance. Also, the United States Concealed Carry Association, they've been in business actually longer than the NRA, and they provide up to $2 million in civil costs and $250,000 for criminal defense. That's crazy. So everybody is more familiar with the NRA, and I think also because they're relaunching their insurance, Carry Guard, it's just making, it's becoming more public. So Guns Down has been responding to it, and Guns Down is a gun control group. It was formed last year, and they're currently running an ad campaign to criticize this murder insurance. It features Trayvon Martin's mother, and in it, they show also very just images of various killings. And in this too, what they feel, and I agree with them, is that this type of insurance really doesn't promote gun safety at all. This type of insurance makes people feel like, oh, well, I can just shoot somebody and then I got insurance for it. It'll be all good. That idea of shoot first, ask questions later. Well, you won't have questions later because you're covered by your insurance company. Yeah, this is really, I was really surprised to see this. Really surprised to see this. Murder insurance. All right, let's move on from murder insurance. I want to highlight a few women. Yeah. A couple big things happened this week, and women were at the head of that happening. So we'll start in Saudi Arabia. Well, actually, Saudi Arabia actually appointed its first spokeswoman, and this is to the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. Her name is Fatima Bashan, and so she's the first spokesperson for Saudi Arabia. That's amazing. Also, let's talk about Jacinda Ardern. Have you heard about this? She's in New Zealand, and she's their youngest prime minister since 1856. But specifically, she is the youngest woman leader, period, in their history. Wow, that's interesting. And also want to talk about Chelsea Handler. I don't know. I didn't watch her Netflix show. However, I do think she's very, very funny. I'm just off on my Netflix watching. You know how Netflix is because of the binge watching. I don't have a lot of time, so you really gotta put your shows in hierarchy because you could just watch them endlessly. But anyway, um, she's decided to actually not go forward with her next season of her show, Chelsea, on Netflix. Instead, she wants to focus on political activism. She actually tweeted about this as well and put it on social media. This is interesting because she's saying that she's going to devote all of her energy to becoming a more knowledgeable and engaged citizen. I think that's very commendable because a lot of times we just don't admit what we don't know. We really don't, especially as we get older. So for her to say, I want to become more knowledgeable and engaged citizen is amazing. She also says that she wants to get more females elected to public office and campaign for candidates who are fighting for women's rights. She wants to travel the country speaking to people to gain a better understanding of the political divide. Interesting. And she's going to then create a Netflix documentary on that, on her findings. I think that's amazing. Anything that's really highlighting um, our political divide and really putting a voice to that and really trying to, get women out there to help push equality, I think is amazing. So go Chelsea Handler. Now I have an update for you. Um, I don't even know. Like, I know I definitely didn't talk about this on the show, but I feel like you may be aware of it. Do you remember the man that was forced off of the United Airlines flight? Remember, it was a doctor, and they basically said, "Hey, we need you to give up your seat." And he was like, "I'm tired. I want to get home. I'm not giving up my seat." And then he was forcibly removed from the flight. Yeah, he also sustained injuries and was hospitalized. Well, apparently, they came to a ruling, so to speak, last month. And when I say they, I mean, yeah, Chicago Aviation Department. And what they did was they fired two officers involved in dragging the man off of the flight. Yes, this was Dr. David Dow. He was 69 years old. They drug him off of this flight. And yeah, this United Airlines flight. And this guy suffered injuries and had to go to the hospital. So here's what the Chicago Aviation Department says. They said that one of the men escalated a non threatening situation into a physically violent one and said that a second removed facts from one of the reports. He removed facts. Interesting. They also issued a 5-day suspension to two others who were also involved. Now, again, this ruling went out in August, or the firings went out in August. We're just finding out about it now. But here's what Mr. Dial's lawyer said. I thought this was interesting. He said, "There's a lesson to be learned here for police officers at all levels. Do not state something that is clearly contrary to video viewed by the world." I agree. I totally agree. All right, now let's keep it moving. California, also in the news this week. Here's why. California is the first state to legally institute a third gender option. Now, if you listen to Political Pop, I mentioned this yesterday, but I wanted to bring it up again today because I know some of you don't listen to my my daily Political Pop. So I wanted to talk about this. So yes, they made it legal, a third gender option. Now, this is the Gender Recognition Act. It was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown, and it will allow transgendered, intersex, and non-binary individuals to choose a third gender option. This is on state IDs, birth certificates, and driver's licenses. It'll start in 2019, and it'll be easier to change gender identity on a California birth certificate because of this law, now you will not have to require that a doctor admits whether you had had some type of counseling or undergone clinical treatment for a gender change. That's big. Now, Oregon began allowing a third option, and this is X, that's what they call it in Oregon, on driver's licenses. That happened earlier this year. Also in Washington, D.C., they also have a third gender option on IDs, but neither of these areas allow that change on birth certificates. So again, California is truly monumental in making this change. Now, here's what the senator Scott Weiner says out there. He says, with Governor Brown's signature on this bill, transgender and non-binary people will now be able to identify themselves as they are and not as who society says that they should be. Now, interesting to note, countries that have already passed or are in the process of passing legislation that allows a citizen to legally identify as outside of the gender binary includes Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, Pakistan, and Nepal. Yeah, monumental out in California. And also, we talk about Playboy, but did you see they released this also yesterday? Playboy, for the first time ever, now they've had a transgender model in Playboy before, but this is the first time that they'll actually have a transgender playmate. I just thought that was interesting. Again, I didn't. We talked about Playboy before. I'm not. I'm not their demographic. It's not my magazine. But I was curious if you watch us, listen to the show here. Can you do me a favor and let me know what you think as a reader? Because I'm not. I asked my husband, and he's not into Playboy, and he was like, "I don't know. I'm not. I'm not into that. This just doesn't. This is not. He kind of was. I don't know, not really even wanting to talk about it. But I'm just curious in general what a reader, feels. Do you feel anything? I do know this is major for transgender people in the world. Like, this is major to be able to be recognized on a national level. That's major. I'm curious how the readers feel about that. So if you could let me know, that would be great. And now let's move on to In Our World. And today we're going to be talking about deadly pollution. Now, I do know last week we were talking about reducing your carbon footprint. Stay with me because a new report came out yesterday. Now, I don't believe in coincidences, but I just have to say this. I was just talking about this last week, and now this report came out on Thursday, and this is what they say. Pollution kills 3 times more than AIDS, TB, and malaria combined. Now, the report was released by the Lancelot Commissions on Pollution and Health. This was released yesterday. Now, let me just say, when I was reading about this report, this is one of the times that I really, again, felt like an American. And when I say this, I mean American in the most ignorant sense of the term. Because we're used to having more clean air. We don't really think about how deadly air pollution is. A lot of times people just don't think about it. We don't think about pollution, not just air pollution, pollution in general, how it affects our air, our water, our soil, the food that we eat. We don't think about it, And so when I was reading this, I was shocked, and I just want to share it in case you didn't know. I feel like you might be like me and not know, but you may have heard of this. So let's talk about it. In 2015, this study said that nearly 1 in 6 deaths, this is an estimated 9 million people worldwide, were related to pollution in some form. Now, the forms of pollution: air, water, soil, chemical, or occupational pollution. Now, this report breaks it down. Air pollution is far the largest contributor to early death. This form of pollution is linked to 6.5 million deaths in 2015. Now, let's talk about water pollution. Water pollution responsible for 1.8 million deaths, and workplace-related pollution led to 0.8 million deaths. Now, this form of pollution, according to the report, poses the next largest risk. Now, who's affected in our world? Overwhelmingly, the majority of the people affected are people living in low and middle income countries. Especially vulnerable are children. And so I wanted to put this out there and just talk about it. In our world, this is happening. Yes, in Western civilization, we do a lot to try to help reduce pollution. We do a lot, but in our world, we need to do more. And I want to share something else. There was a time when I worked in news, and I used to do traffic, so I always worked with the meteorologist because it's always weather and traffic together. And so it wasn't until that job, I want to say back in 2011 when I started, that I even noticed in America when a meteorologist would say, "Hey, high air pollution day today." I never noticed it until then. And I was like, whoa, I remember pollen, but it never connected in my mind. Air pollution. But I know that if any of you guys are watching or listening overseas, that you're not shocked. Places like countries like in Africa, right? Countries like Asia, you guys know how bad pollution is. Yeah, we have to do better in not only our education, but our actual reaction. Actual reaction. I did not realize how deadly that is. It's deadly. So if you want more information, you can go to one website that's very, very good and informative is pollution.org. Yeah, so that wraps up the show. Thank you so much for joining me again. Man, I know there is just a lot going on in the world. There's probably a lot going on for you personally. I'm going to continue to pray, put love and light into the world. I ask that you do the same. I hope you have an amazing, amazing weekend. And I will see you next week.